Good morning and welcome to the Take on this Tuesday morning. Yes, you can see this background here. I am in absolutely beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana, loving life, sitting here right on Lake Pontchartrain. It's unbelievable. It's great, beautiful weather down here. So we're having a great time. What wasn't so beautiful was yesterday and how the markets actually started up, and we'd gotten spoiled. We had this great run up, and then suddenly we start to see a little bit of pressure on the markets. Nothing too major, but if you look in that last 12 minutes of the day, we did really jump, and that was a really nice spring because it brought us off of the lows, and we had a little bit of that as well over in the NASDAQ, where it was just that final 12 minutes. It shows you how much there are these algorithmic trading and all the rest of it, and certain triggers that can happen and how fast things can move. We still held on to 30,000. We still did finish down about 150 points on the Dow, but we had a positive day for the NASDAQ, and the NASDAQ's been mostly working with the S&P and with the Dow, but every once in a while we are seeing these dislocations like we'd seen for so many months, where we'd seen this big dislocation of the NASDAQ moving in the opposite direction from the rest of the indices. So they're back a little bit today in tandem, but I'll tell you what, it's been a really interesting day yesterday where we watched volatility still kind of rising a little bit because of some of that pressure, and energy breaking back through, and that being one of the pulls on the Dow, energy breaking back through underneath in the XLE underneath that 40 level, which it had just recaptured, and that was a nice strong move. So the strength of the volatility up there towards 21, not all that difficult of a day, considering the fact we finished down about 150 points. But the reality is the volume did come back a little bit. It's still unbelievable. We're talking about 32.5 million contracts trading, but got a little spoiled. We've had a lot of numbers much higher than that. So suddenly that doesn't look quite as impressive as it once did. We had some great activity yesterday. When you look over at Tesla, that was almost 1.5 million contracts yesterday. Apple, about 1.25 million contracts yesterday. And then Palantir. We've talked about this one. That's one we talked about last night at the round table as well. And the issues that we had with that one, because we had the unusual option activity in there, but unfortunately that activity we don't ever consider any of these as absolutes, but we certainly do like what we are seeing oftentimes out of these moves in terms of the unusual option activity that we see. So we did look over at the NASDAQ and see some that move that we talked about, a little bit of that dislocation move, because the fact it finished up 55 points, but that was names like Tesla that was rocking to the upside, Moderna on a nice bounce back, Netflix, NetEase, Workday, Broadcom, Facebook, Lam Research, those kinds of names. And that brings me right back to what is really driving the NASDAQ right now. It is technology, but take a look at what's really been going on with the semiconductors, another all-time high for the semis. And then look over at bio towards those highs as well. As a matter of fact, the technology space for all the flack that falls. So the consistency of to really those semiconductors, they have been impressive. I got a dog walking down the street down here, not too far away. So this morning we started off the markets down about 100 points. Nothing too much to worry about. NASDAQ was working, as I say, with the markets is pushing to the downside as well. That was only down about 25 points or so. But then we started to see a nice early rally off of that, and now we're starting to slip back down once again. So the focus, again, it's going to be on the stimulus package and what people continually go back and forth. And we keep hearing about these things. But on top of that, these viruses, the case numbers that continue to set new records, that's certainly something that I think is being focused on, at least today. And it is concerning. And we're watching the volatility rise again. I mentioned yesterday we were in the 21s, today pushing towards these 22s. So we are seeing a little bit more volatility coming back into the market. Not a lot. We just had broken through that 20 just briefly last week, and now here we are back at 22. So nothing major, but we're seeing a little bit of the volatility coming back. So we did bounce quickly, and it was certain names that the names that have been moving, and we talk about financials, we talk about industrials, and we talk about some of these names that have really had a pretty decent day of late. We see a little bit of a pullback here and there, and nothing major, but we see financials getting a little bit of a pull. You see some of the utilities as well getting a little bit of a pull to the downside, dragging also on the markets as far as the NASDAQ's concerned, and why the NASDAQ's moving with the Dow right now. We are seeing Tesla, you're seeing Moderna, you're seeing some of these names that are definitely, or NVIDIA, excuse me, not Moderna. So we are seeing a little bit of a pull there on the NASDAQ. So home builders, that was the real focus today. Earnings, of course, Toll Brothers. You look across and you almost scratch your head because the earnings numbers were strong. The deliveries were there. It was off a little bit in terms of pricing of the homes, but to push this stock down 8% today, I think is an extraordinary opportunity, in my opinion. But you look across and we've had a really nice run from these home builders to the upside today, all of them getting pulled down, but specifically Toll Brothers, which is down like 7-8% today, which seems pretty extreme given what the numbers were that were reported. But it's been also a great market for these home builders because of the interest rates. We are seeing this, and I brought this up a while back, and we're still seeing this 10-year holding somewhere near that 1% level. Not getting there quite yet, but starting to move to the upside, and folks who think that there is still continuous to be some upside. Now, I talk about energy a lot, and we've been talking about how we don't oftentimes like to highlight the ETFs, but I had to do this one because this was some nice size today. And as much as I'm against going into the ETFs very often, the XOP. Now, we talk about some of these various names, and that's where a lot of these quote unquote beta names exist. And we're looking at January calls, about 11,000 of the January 62 calls being bought up. Stock was trading just underneath 60. It was trading 59.80. And stock, it's an ETF, but that's the levels. And then we see this 11,000 of these Jan 62s. It's part of a three-way trade. So they're buying the Jan 62s, selling the 68s up above, and selling the 50 puts. That's a three-way trade. That's a very, very bullish look, and saying if it drops, willing to own it. If it goes up to the upside, I think that it's limited, but we still think that there's a nice big push to the upside. So the $3 options are a little bit expensive, especially for this ETF, but nonetheless, it's a big trade, and it's a three-way trade that's very, very bullish. So I thought that one was one of the most unique ones that I would want to highlight today. Now, as I push over, I'm seeing people that are asking some questions. We'll do a couple questions, but the annoyance of this dog barking is crazy. What's happening with the AMD trade? They don't always happen in a day. They don't always happen in hours. Every once in a while they do, and they're amazing. But we have seen the consistency of the buying in AMD and other names, but AMD specifically has been one of those really strong names where we've seen multiple hits over the last week or so. What do you consider a high short ratio? You know what? I saw this question yesterday as well. So they're talking about short interest for a stock, and what do we consider to be a pretty high level? I think once you start getting something even above the 10% level, now there are names out there where you're looking at 30%, 40%, and that's extreme. So that would be definitely high. But I even think when you start getting over 10+%, that starts to stand out for me. So, everybody's got their certain levels, but I think when I'm looking around, there are so many different names out there, and you start to see that level start to rise. That is something that can be, I think that's sort of the level where I view that to be something worth noting. Hi, Pete. Do you think the advisor, the put options in the GLD expiring mid-next? I did see some GLD paper. We have not, and you haven't heard us talk about that side of metals. We certainly on the basic materials, yes, we've seen an incredible amount of activity. We have not seen SLV. We have not seen a whole lot of GLD. We have not seen a lot of those specific names in those categories either. So I haven't seen enough paper there to grab my attention. So until we do, I'm just staying away. And I do love these basic materials though. And we've seen so much paper across the board and so many of those. Again, yesterday, Vale and a few of those names just continue to hit in the bullish way to the upside. What is the ETF? Sorry, XOP is the ETF that we're talking about here in terms of the unusual that we're seeing today in these January calls. What about the XLE? Yeah, the XLE. Now, remember, when you look at the XLE, you're talking about an index that is these integrated names, and specific names really do dominate that index. So it's fine. I love it. I use it as a reference all the time. I own Chevron. I own Exxon. And those are the two big names. So if you're willing to own those names, it's a lot like owning the XLE. And I'd always rather be, when it's possible, I'd much always rather be in the individual names than into the ETFs themselves, just because you get more bang for your buck. And I hear guys talking all the time about passive investing, and that's all fine for the people that don't want to be aggressive and don't want to be a part of the markets each and every day. But I do, and I think most of you who are watching do. So try to highlight far more in the individual names than the ETFs themselves. But today was an exception just because we'd seen so much paper in a lot of those beta names that we bring up all the time, the Conchos, the Apaches, and all these kinds of names. And they have the moves to the upside, but they also have extraordinary moves to the downside as well. Let's get one last question in here, and then we're going to run. XRT was the ETF. No, hopefully I already clarified that. XOP was the ETF that I was talking about there. So I'm going to run. You guys have a great day of trading. It's always fun, always exciting. My wife and I are having a great time on this trip. We keep bouncing around from city to city. The greatest people in the world. We're with another couple last night, good friends of ours. Awesome dinner. Sat around, had a lot of great conversation. And here we are, Lake Pontchartrain. It's absolutely beautiful. If that dog would stop barking. Have a great day, guys. Have a great day of trading.